Marcus Johnson woke up that morning with a heavy feeling in his chest. Today was his court date for a speeding ticket he got 3 weeks ago. He was going 45 in a 35 zone on his way to the hospital after getting a call that his grandmother was not doing well. The police officer who pulled him over didn't care about his reasons. Now Marcus had to face a judge. He put on his only suit, a navy blue one his grandmother had bought him for job interviews. It felt tight around his shoulders now. Marcus had lost weight in the past 2 weeks. He hadn't been eating much since his grandmother died. Gloria Johnson had raised Marcus since he was 10 years old. His parents died in a car crash, and Gloria stepped in without question. She worked double shifts as a court clerk to make sure Marcus had everything he needed. She made sure he went to college. She was at his graduation, clapping louder than anyone else when he walked across the stage. And now she was gone. Marcus looked at himself in the mirror and fixed his tie. His eyes were still red from crying the night before. He had found a box of old photos while cleaning out her house. Photos of his parents. Photos of him as a child. Photos of Gloria when she was young and beautiful, standing proud in her court clerk uniform. "I'll make you proud today, Grandma," Marcus whispered to his reflection. The courthouse was busy that morning. People rushed in and out, some in suits, others in regular clothes. Marcus checked in with the clerk at the front desk. His hands were shaking. "Johnson Marcus, traffic violation. Courtroom 3, the clerk said without looking up. Marcus nodded and made his way to the courtroom. He sat in the back, watching other cases before his. The judge, Richard Powell, seemed tired and annoyed. He handled each case quickly, barely looking at the people standing before him. Judge Powell was known in the county for being tough. He had been a judge for 15 years and had seen it all. Or at least that's what he thought. Over the years, he had grown cold to the stories he heard. Everyone had an excuse, everyone had a reason. In his mind, they were all the same. Next case, Johnson, Marcus, speeding violation and failure to appear at scheduled court date, the bailiff called out. Marcus stood up on shaky legs and walked to the front of the courtroom. He felt everyone's eyes on him as he moved. Or maybe it was just his nerves making him feel that way. "Mr. Johnson, you were caught going 45 in a 35 zone on Oak Street. Is that correct?" Judge Powell asked, looking down at his papers. "Yes, Your Honor," Marcus replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "And you failed to appear at your scheduled court date 2 weeks ago. Do you have an explanation for that?" The judge's voice was sharp, cutting through the quiet courtroom like a knife. Marcus took a deep breath. "Yes, Your Honor. My grandmother passed away that day. She raised me after my parents died. I was at the funeral home making arrangements when I should have been here. I know that's no excuse, but you're right. That is no excuse," Judge Powell interrupted. "The court sends reminders. You could have called to reschedule." Marcus felt his throat tighten. "I know, Your Honor. I wasn't thinking clearly. She was all the family I had left, and her death was sudden. I found her in her home. She had a heart attack while getting ready for work. She worked as a court clerk here for 35 years. Judge Powell raised an eyebrow. "A court clerk? What was her name?" "Gloria Johnson, Your Honor," Marcus said, feeling a tear roll down his cheek at saying her name out loud. Something flickered across Judge Powell's face, but it quickly disappeared. "Mr. Johnson, I understand losing someone is difficult, but the law doesn't stop for personal tragedies." Marcus nodded, wiping his cheek with the back of his hand. "I understand, Your Honor. I'm prepared to pay the fine and accept whatever penalty you think is fair." As Marcus spoke, his voice cracked with emotion. More tears came and he couldn't stop them. The past 2 weeks had been the hardest of his life. He had to plan a funeral, clean out his grandmother's house, talk to lawyers about her will, all, while trying to keep his own job as a high school English teacher. Judge Powell watched the young man cry and something inside him hardened. He had seen too many people cry in his courtroom trying to get sympathy, trying to get out of tickets or charges. To him, they were all the same. A small smile formed on Judge Powell's lips. Then a chuckle escaped. "Mr. Johnson, save the waterworks. For someone who hasn't heard every excuse in the book," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "This is a courtroom, not a therapy session. The few people in the courtroom fell silent. Even the bailiff looked uncomfortable. Marcus stood there humiliated, trying to compose himself. "I'm sorry, Your Honor," Marcus managed to say. "I didn't mean to disrespect the court." Judge Powell shuffled some papers on his desk. "Let's see. The fine for your speeding violation is $150. The penalty for failure to appear is an additional $75. Do you have anything else to say before I make my ruling?" Marcus was about to speak when the courtroom door opened. He didn't turn around to look, but he noticed Judge Powell's eyes moved to the back of the room. The judge's expression changed immediately. His back straightened and the smirk disappeared from his face. "Before you continue, Your Honor," a strong female voice called from the back of the courtroom, "I would like to approach the bench." Judge Powell's face turned pale. "Court will take a 5-minute recess," he announced quickly, banging his gavel. Marcus turned around to see who had spoken. A tall, elegant black woman in her 60s stood at the back of the courtroom. She wore a tailored gray suit and carried herself with unmistakable authority. There was something familiar about her, but Marcus couldn't place it right away. The woman walked down the aisle with purposeful steps. People moved out of her way instinctively. As she got closer, Marcus recognized her. She had been at his grandmother's funeral. She had hugged him and told him how proud Gloria had been of him. "Judge Davis," Judge Powell said, his voice suddenly respectful. "This is an unexpected honor." "I'm sure it is," she replied coolly. "May I speak with you in your chambers?" "Now?" Judge Powell nodded quickly. "Of course. This way, please." As they walked toward the door behind the bench, Judge Davis stopped beside Marcus. She placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Mr. Johnson, I'm very sorry for your loss. Your grandmother was a dear friend of mine for over 40 years. Please wait. Here. I'd like to speak with you after I talk with Judge Powell." Marcus nodded, confused but grateful for the kindness in her voice. The courtroom buzzed with whispers as Judge Powell and Judge Davis disappeared into the chambers. The bailiff called for quiet, but people kept talking in low voices, wondering what was happening. Marcus sat down, his mind racing. Who was this Judge Davis and how did she know his grandmother? More importantly, why did Judge Powell look so afraid when he saw her? Little did Marcus know that this unexpected interruption was about to change the course of his day and possibly his life, forever. The door to Judge Powell's chambers closed with a soft click. Inside, Judge Patricia Davis stood tall, her eyes fixed on Judge Powell as he nervously offered her a seat. "No thank you, Richard. I won't be staying long," she said. Her voice was calm, but firm. Judge Powell cleared his throat. "Judge Davis, it's been a while. What brings you to my courtroom today?" Patricia Davis had been a federal appeals court judge for over 20 years. Before that, she had been a district court judge and a respected lawyer. Her reputation was spotless. Judges, lawyers, and court staff all respected her, not just for her legal mind, but for her fairness and compassion. "I'm conducting a review of courtroom practices throughout the state," she explained. "But that's not why I stopped you just now." Judge Powell loosened his tie slightly. The room felt warmer than usual. "I was at Gloria Johnson's funeral 2 weeks ago," Judge Davis continued. "That young man out there delivered a beautiful speech about his grandmother. She was my friend for over 40 years, Richard. We started as court clerks together before I went to law school." Judge Powell's face paled even more. "I had no idea." "Clearly," Judge Davis cut him off. "What I want to know is why you thought it was appropriate to laugh at a grieving young man in your courtroom." Judge Powell sat down behind his desk. "Judge Davis, you have to understand. Every day I hear excuses." "So you've stopped listening?" she asked. "You've stopped seeing the human beings in front of you? Is that what 15 years on the bench has done to you?" Judge Powell had no answer. "Gloria worked in this courthouse for 35 years, Judge Davis said. She believed in the system. She believed in justice tempered with mercy. She taught me that, and I've carried it with me my entire career." She walked closer to his desk. "I came here today because I was in town for a meeting. I wanted to see how the local courts were doing. I never expected to see such a display of callousness from a judge I once respected." Judge Powell looked down at his hands. I apologize, Judge Davis. It's been a difficult year. The caseload is heavy, and sometimes I get impatient. Impatient is one thing, cruel is another, she replied. That young man lost the only family he had left, and you laughed at his tears. She turned to leave, but stopped at the door. I expect better from you when we go back out there, Richard, and we need to talk about your overall conduct in the courtroom after this case is concluded. With that, she left, closing the door behind her. Outside in the courtroom, Marcus sat anxiously. The whispers around him had grown louder. He heard people speculating about who Judge Davis was and why she had interrupted the proceedings. That's Federal Judge Patricia Davis, an older man in a suit, told someone nearby. She's one of the most respected judges in the country. I heard she might be up for the Supreme Court next year. Marcus's heart raced. Why would such an important judge care about his simple traffic case? And how did she know his grandmother? The door to the chambers opened and Judge Davis emerged. She walked directly to Marcus and sat beside him. Marcus, I don't know if you remember me from the funeral, she said gently. I do, ma'am, Marcus replied. You said you were friends with my grandmother. Judge Davis smiled sadly. More than friends, we were like sisters. We started working at this courthouse together in 1982. Your grandmother stayed as a clerk and I went to law school at night. But we remained close all these years. She took a small photo from her purse and handed it to Marcus. It showed two young women in court clerk uniforms, arms around each other's shoulders, smiling widely at the camera. One was his grandmother, looking so young and happy. The other was clearly a younger Judge Davis. She was so proud of you, Marcus, Judge Davis continued. Every time we had lunch, she would tell me about your latest achievements. When you became a teacher, she was over the moon. Tears welled up in Marcus's eyes again, but this time he didn't try to hide them. She never told me she knew a federal judge. Judge Davis laughed softly. That was Gloria, never one to brag. She just said her friend Patty worked in the federal courts. Just then, the bailiff called out, "All rise, court is back in session." Judge Powell returned to the bench looking subdued. Judge Davis squeezed Marcus's hand before walking to a seat in the front row. Mr. Johnson, Judge Powell began, his tone completely different from before. I want to apologize for my earlier behavior. It was unprofessional and unkind. Marcus nodded, surprised by the change. I understand you're a high school English teacher? Judge Powell asked. Yes, Your Honor, at Lincoln High, Judge Powell nodded. A noble profession, and I'm told your grandmother was Gloria Johnson, who served this court for 35 years. Yes, sir, Marcus replied. I've been informed that the day you missed your court appearance was the day of her funeral. Is that correct? Yes, Your Honor. Judge Powell looked down at his papers for a moment, then back at Marcus. Mr. Johnson, in light of these circumstances, I'm dismissing the failure to appear charge. Regarding the speeding ticket, given that you were on your way to the hospital, I'm reducing the fine to the minimum of $75. Marcus couldn't believe what he was hearing. Thank you, Your Honor. Additionally, Judge Powell continued, I would like to offer the court's condolences on your loss. Gloria Johnson was clearly a valued member of the court family, and her service will not be forgotten. From the front row, Judge Davis watched with approval. It wasn't just about getting Marcus a fair outcome. It was about reminding a judge of his duty to see the humanity in everyone who stood before him. After the ruling, Marcus paid his reduced fine and walked out of the courtroom with Judge Davis. Thank you, he said as they stood in the hallway. I don't know what you said to him, but it made a difference. I simply reminded him of what your grandmother believed in, that justice without compassion isn't justice at all, she replied. An idea seemed to form in her mind. Marcus, do you have time for coffee? I'd like to talk to you about something. Of course, he said. They walked to a small cafe across from the courthouse. Judge Davis ordered for both of them black coffee, just like his grandmother used to. Drink. Your grandmother kept every newspaper clipping about you, Judge Davis said. Every award, every mention of your name. She had a whole scrapbook. Marcus smiled sadly. I found it when I was cleaning out her house. Did you also find her journals? Judge Davis asked. Marcus shook his head. No, I didn't know she kept journals. She did, for decades. She wrote about her experiences in the court, the changes she witnessed in the justice system over the years. She had a unique perspective as someone who worked behind the scenes. Judge Davis stirred her coffee. Those journals would be valuable to people studying the history of our courts. I'll look for them, Marcus promised. Judge Davis looked at him thoughtfully. Marcus, have you ever considered law school? The question took him by surprise. Law school? No, I've always wanted to be a teacher. Teaching is important work, she agreed. But so is ensuring justice. Your grandmother believed you had the potential to do great things. She mentioned once that you had a strong sense of right and wrong even as a child. Marcus thought about this. I do enjoy teaching, but lately I've been wondering if I could do more. There's a summer program for people considering law as a second career, Judge Davis explained. It gives you a taste of law school without committing to the full program. I help run it. I think you'd be perfect for it. She reached into her briefcase and pulled out a brochure, sliding it across the table to him. Think about it. The deadline to apply is next month. Marcus took the brochure, feeling a strange mix of grief and possibility. His grandmother was gone, but perhaps her legacy could live on in a way he hadn't considered before. I will, he said. Thank you, Judge Davis. Call me Patty, she said with a smile. Any family of Gloria's is family of mine. As they finished their coffee, Marcus realized that this day, which had started with such dread, had somehow opened an unexpected door. He didn't know if he would walk through it, but for the first time since his grandmother's death, he felt a small spark of hope for the future. 3 days after the courtroom incident, Marcus returned to his grandmother's house. The small brick home where he had grown up still felt full of her presence. Her reading glasses sat on the side table next to her favorite chair. Her collection of ceramic birds lined the windowsill in the kitchen. The smell of her lavender hand lotion lingered in the air. Marcus had been avoiding coming back since the funeral. Each visit to pack up her belongings had been painful, but today he had a purpose. He needed to find his grandmother's journals. He started in the most obvious place, her bedroom. The old wooden desk in the corner held bills, letters, and greeting cards, but no journals. Next, he checked the bookshelves in the living room, carefully looking behind rows of mystery novels and classic literature that his grandmother had loved to read. After 2 hours of searching, Marcus sat down on the couch, frustrated. Where would she have kept something so personal? Then he remembered the cedar chest at the foot of her bed. It had always been locked, and his grandmother kept the key on her keychain. Marcus went to the kitchen drawer where he had placed her keys and other personal items. He found the small brass key and returned to the bedroom. The lock turned with a soft click, and the lid opened with a creak. Inside, he found photo albums, old letters tied with ribbon, and at the bottom, a stack of leather-bound books. Marcus lifted them out carefully. There were 12 journals, each labeled with years. The earliest was from 1982, the year his grandmother started working at the courthouse. Marcus opened the first journal and saw his grandmother's neat handwriting filling the pages. He sat on the edge of the bed and began to read. First day at Tao and So, the county courthouse. I'm nervous but excited. Met another new clerk named Patricia Davis. She seems smart and kind. We're the only 2 black women working in the clerk's office. I think we're going to be friends. Marcus smiled. He could almost hear his grandmother's voice as he read. He turned more pages, reading about her early days working in the courts, her friendship with Patricia, and later about raising him after his parents died. One entry from 1998 caught his attention. Marcus won the spelling bee today, 10 years old and already so bright. Patricia says he has the mind of a lawyer. She sees something special in him, just like I do. Maybe someday he'll work in these courts too. Not as a clerk like his old grandma, but as a lawyer or even a judge. A boy can dream, and so can his grandmother. Tears filled Marcus's eyes. He had never known his grandmother had those dreams for him. He had always thought she was happy with his choice to become a teacher. Marcus spent hours reading through the journals, learning things about his grandmother he had never known. She wrote about difficult cases she witnessed, about judges who were fair and others who were not. She wrote about the slow changes in the justice system over decades, and she wrote about him, page after page of proud moments, hopes, and dreams. In the most recent journal, he found an entry from just 3 months ago. Had lunch with Patty today. She's being considered for the Supreme Court. My friend, a Supreme Court justice. Who would have thought when we were young clerks that she would rise so high? She's still the same Patty, though. Asked all about Marcus and his teaching. I showed her the article about his students winning the state essay contest. She says he has a natural sense of justice and should consider law school. Maybe she's right. He's 28 now, not too old to start a new path. I'll mention it to him someday, when the time is right. Marcus closed the journal, his heart heavy. His grandmother never got the chance to have that conversation with him, but somehow through Judge Davis her wish had found its way to him anyway. The next morning, Marcus called the number on the brochure Judge Davis had given him. A friendly woman answered and explained the summer law program to him. It was 6 weeks long, designed for people considering law as a second career. The deadline to apply was in 3 weeks. I'd like to request an application, Marcus said. Of course. I'll need your name and email address. Marcus Johnson. There was a pause. On the line, Marcus Johnson? Are you Gloria Johnson's grandson? Marcus was surprised. Yes, I am. Oh, Judge Davis mentioned you might be calling. She spoke very highly of you. We'll send the application right away. And please note that Judge Davis has recommended you for the Diversity Scholarship, which would cover the full cost of the program. Marcus thanked her, feeling both grateful and overwhelmed. It seemed that doors were opening for him, thanks to his grandmother's legacy and Judge Davis's help. Later that week, Marcus received an unexpected visitor at school. He was erasing the chalkboard after his last class when there was a knock at his classroom door. He turned to see Judge Powell standing awkwardly in the doorway. Mr. Johnson, the judge said, I hope I'm not interrupting. Marcus was stunned, too. See the judge who had laughed at him now standing in his classroom. No, not at all. My students just left. Judge Powell entered the room slowly, looking around at the posters of famous authors and inspirational quotes on the walls. Nice classroom. Thank you, Marcus replied, unsure why the judge was there. Judge Powell cleared his throat. I came to apologize properly. What I did in court was inexcusable. I've been on the bench too long without taking time to remember why I became a judge in the first place. Marcus nodded, not knowing what to say. Judge Davis came to see me again. Yesterday, Judge Powell continued, she told me about your grandmother's journals and how they documented 40 years of our local court history. Yes, I just found them, Marcus said. She thinks they could be valuable for training new judges and court staff. A view of the justice system from someone who saw it all but wasn't in the spotlight. Judge Powell paused. I agree with her. Your grandmother saw things that judges and lawyers miss. Marcus felt a surge of pride for his grandmother. I understand you're considering the summer law program, Judge Powell said. News travels fast, Marcus replied with a small smile. Judge Davis is very persuasive, the judge admitted, and she believes in you. She thinks you have what it takes to be an excellent lawyer. Judge Powell looked directly at Marcus now. I want to add my recommendation to hers, and I'd like to offer you a part-time job at the courthouse this summer, working with our community outreach program. It would fit around the summer law program schedule. Marcus was speechless. It's not charity, Judge Powell added quickly. We need someone who can connect with the community, especially young people. Someone who understands both education and the courts. Your background as a teacher makes you perfect for this. Why are you doing this? Marcus finally asked. Judge Powell sighed. Because your grandmother was right about many things, including me. I found my name in one of her old performance reviews from when I was a new judge. She wrote that I had potential, but needed to remember that behind every case is a human being with a story. He looked down at his hands. I forgot that lesson somewhere along the way. Your grandmother never forgot it, and neither did Judge Davis. I think it's time I remembered it too. Marcus considered the judge's words. People could change. His grandmother had believed that. She saw the best in everyone, even when they couldn't see it in themselves. I appreciate the offer, Marcus said. I'd like to learn more about the position. Judge Powell smiled, relief visible on his face. Excellent. I'll have my assistant send you the details. He turned to leave but stopped at the door. Your grandmother would be proud of you, Mr. Johnson, not just for considering law school, but for the man you've become. After the judge left, Marcus sat at his desk, thinking about how much had changed in just 1 week. His life was taking an unexpected turn. He picked up the application for the summer law program and began to fill it out. His grandmother's voice seemed to whisper in his ear. It's never too late to follow a new path, Marcus. Just make sure it's a path with heart. 6 weeks later, Marcus stood in front of the courthouse where it had all begun. Today was his first day of the summer law program. He wore a new suit that he had bought with his first paycheck from the community outreach job Judge Powell had offered him. The courthouse looked different to him now. Before, it had been a place of anxiety and bad memories. Now he saw it as a place of possibility. He had spent the last month working part-time in the community outreach office, creating programs to help young people understand the court system. The work was rewarding in a way he hadn't expected. Ready for your first day? A voice asked behind him. Marcus turned to see Judge Davis walking up the courthouse steps. She wore a dark blue suit and carried a leather briefcase. I think so, Marcus replied. A little nervous. Judge Davis smiled. That's normal. I still get nervous on the first day of teaching this program, and I've been doing it for 10 years. They walked into the building together. The security guards nodded respectfully at Judge Davis. One of them, an older man named Frank, waved at Marcus. Morning, Mr. Johnson. Good luck today. Marcus waved back. In the weeks he had been working at the courthouse, he had gotten to know many of the staff. They had all known his grandmother, and they welcomed him like family. The summer law program was held in a large conference room on the 3rd floor. When Marcus and Judge Davis entered, about 20 other students were already there. They came from different backgrounds. Some were teachers like Marcus, others were social workers, business people, or recent college graduates. All of them were considering law as a new career path. Welcome to the Summer Law Immersion Program, Judge Davis began once everyone was seated. Over the next 6 weeks, you'll get a taste of what law school is like. You'll learn basic legal concepts, participate in mock trials, and meet lawyers from different fields of practice. She looked around the room, her eyes pausing briefly on Marcus. Some of you might decide that law isn't for you, and that's fine. This program is designed to help you make that decision before committing to 3 years of law school. Others might discover a passion for justice that you didn't know you had. The first day was intense. They started with an overview of the legal system, followed by a discussion of a real case that had gone to the Supreme Court. Marcus found himself speaking up more than he expected, drawing on knowledge he had gained from reading his grandmother's journals. During the lunch break, Marcus sat alone, reviewing his notes. A young woman with curly red hair sat down across from him. You're Gloria Johnson's grandson, aren't you? She asked. Marcus looked up, surprised. Yes. Did you know my grandmother? The woman smiled. I'm Lisa Bennett. My mom worked with your grandmother for 20 years in the clerk's office. She always talked about how smart Gloria was, how she knew more about the law than most of the lawyers. Marcus smiled back. That sounds like my grandmother. My mom also said your grandmother helped her when she was a single mom struggling to make ends meet. Got her this job at the courthouse. Changed our lives. Lisa paused. I just wanted to say thank you, and to tell you that it's nice to see you here. My mom would say it's like things coming full circle. After lunch, they had a guest speaker, a public defender named Carlos Rivera. He spoke passionately about the challenges and rewards of representing people who couldn't afford lawyers. Most of my clients have never had anyone really fight for them, Carlos explained. They're used to systems failing them. When they see someone standing up for them in court, sometimes it's the first time they felt like they mattered in the legal system. His words struck a chord with Marcus. He thought about his students, many of whom came from families that struggled with poverty and discrimination. He had tried to be a voice for them as a teacher. Maybe he could do even more as a lawyer. At the end of the day, Judge Davis asked Marcus to stay behind for a moment. "How was your first day?" she asked. "Overwhelming," Marcus admitted. "But in a good way. There's so much to learn." Judge Davis nodded. "You did well in the discussions. You have good instincts." "I've been reading my grandmother's journals," Marcus said. "They're like a history of this courthouse, but from a perspective you don't usually hear about." "Your grandmother saw everything," Judge Davis agreed. "The good, the bad, and the ugly of our justice system. But she never lost faith that it could be better." She hesitated for a moment. "There's something I've been wanting to talk to you about. A special project." Judge Davis explained that she had been working on a book about the history of their state's court system. "It's nearly finished, but something's missing. The voice of the people who worked behind the scenes, the clerks, the bailiffs, the staff who keep the courts running." "Like my grandmother," Marcus said. "Exactly. With your permission, I'd like to include excerpts from her journals. Her observations would add a valuable perspective." Marcus felt honored. She would have liked that. She always said the people behind the scenes had the best view of how things really worked. "There's one more thing," Judge Davis added. "I'd like you to write a chapter for the book about your experience. Growing up with a court clerk as a grandmother, your own journey from teacher to potentially becoming a lawyer. How the system looks to someone who's seen it from the outside and is now considering stepping in." Marcus was stunned. "Me? Write for your book? Who better? You bridge two worlds, education and law, and you have Gloria's voice in those journals to guide you." Marcus promised to think about it. As he left the courthouse that evening, his mind was spinning with everything that had happened. 6 weeks ago, he had been a high school teacher with no thoughts of changing his career. Now he was in a summer law program, working at the courthouse, and being asked to contribute to a book by a federal judge. He decided to visit his grandmother's grave. The cemetery was peaceful in the early evening. Marcus sat on the bench near her headstone, which read, "Gloria Johnson, beloved grandmother, friend, and servant of justice." "I wish you could see all this, Grandma," he said softly. "Judge Davis says hello. She's been looking out for me, just like you always did for everyone else." He told her about his first day in the program, about the community outreach work, and about Judge Davis's book project. "I don't know if I'm cut out to be a lawyer," he admitted. "It's a lot harder than teaching in some ways. But I'm starting to see why you and Judge Davis thought I might be good at it." As Marcus sat there, an elderly man approached carrying flowers. He nodded respectfully at Marcus before placing the flowers on a grave 2 spots away from Gloria's. "Evening," the man said. "You're Gloria Johnson's grandson, aren't you?" Marcus was getting used to being recognized by people he didn't know. "Yes, sir," the man smiled. "I'm Albert Wilson. I was a bailiff at the courthouse for 30 years. Your grandmother brought me soup every day for a month when my wife was sick with cancer." "That sounds like her," Marcus said. Albert looked at Gloria's headstone. She was something special. Always kind, but tough too. Wouldn't let the judges get away with anything. He chuckled. Even the meanest judge would think twice before crossing Gloria Johnson. Marcus smiled, thinking of Judge Powell's face when Judge Davis had walked into his courtroom. "I hear you're in that summer law program," Albert continued. "Thinking of becoming a lawyer?" "I'm considering it," Marcus replied. Albert nodded approvingly. "You'd be good at it. Your grandmother always said you had a good heart and a sharp mind. That's a rare combination in the legal world." As the old bailiff walked away, Marcus felt a sense of peace settle over him. Everywhere he turned, he found people whose lives his grandmother had touched. Her legacy lived on in so many ways he hadn't realized. The path ahead wasn't clear yet. He didn't know if he would eventually apply to law school or return to teaching. But he knew that whatever he decided, he wouldn't be walking alone. His grandmother's spirit would guide him, and the community she had built over decades would support him. Marcus stood up and touched the headstone gently. "Thank you, Grandma," he whispered. for everything you gave me, and for everything you're still giving me, even now. As he walked back to his car, Marcus felt more certain of his next steps than he had in weeks. He would write that chapter for Judge Davis's book. He would share his grandmother's wisdom with the world, and he would keep his mind and heart open to the new path that was unfolding before him. A path that had begun on that fateful day in court when a federal judge walked in at just the right moment. 1 year later, Marcus stood in the back of a crowded bookstore. Posters displayed the cover of Judge Patricia Davis's new book, Justice Behind the Scenes, The Untold Stories of Our Courts. Marcus's name appeared on the cover too, listed as a contributor. People filled every chair in the store, with more standing along the walls waiting for the book launch to begin. Marcus spotted familiar faces in the crowd. Lisa Bennett waved to him from the third row. Carlos Rivera, the public defender who had spoken to his summer law class, sat near the front. Several of Marcus's former high school students had come to support their teacher. Even some of his new law school classmates were there. Yes, Marcus had made his decision. After completing the summer program, he had applied to law school and was accepted with a full scholarship. He now attended evening classes while continuing to teach during the day. It was exhausting but fulfilling in a way he had never expected. Near the front of the room, Marcus saw Judge Powell talking with other judges and lawyers. The judge had changed over the past year. After the incident in his courtroom, he had taken a month-long leave of absence to, as he put it, remember why I became a judge in the first place. When he returned to the bench, people noticed a difference. He listened more. He showed more patience. He treated everyone in his courtroom with respect. The store manager approached the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming to the launch of Justice Behind the Scenes. We are honored to have with us today the author, Federal Judge Patricia Davis, and special contributor, Marcus Johnson. The crowd applauded as Judge Davis made her way to the front. She wore a simple but elegant black dress, her silver hair framing her face. She smiled at Marcus as she passed him, giving his arm a gentle squeeze. Thank you all for coming, Judge Davis began. This book has been a labor of love for many years. It began as a history of our state's court system, but it evolved into something more personal and, I believe, more important. She explained how the book explored the justice system from multiple perspectives: judges, lawyers, defendants, victims, and the often overlooked court staff who kept everything running. One voice that shaped this book in unexpected ways was that of Gloria Johnson, a court clerk who served for 35 years. Though Gloria passed away before this project was completed, her insights live on through the journals she kept throughout her career, and through the memories shared by her grandson, Marcus Johnson. Judge Davis gestured for Marcus to join her. He walked to the front, feeling both nervous and proud. Marcus contributed a chapter that brings together Gloria's observations and his own unique perspective as someone who has viewed our justice system from multiple angles, as a teacher, as the grandson of a court clerk, and now as a law student. Marcus thanked Judge Davis and addressed the audience. My grandmother believed that justice wasn't just about laws and procedures. It was about seeing the humanity in every person who walked through the courthouse doors. He shared the story of that day in court when Judge Powell had laughed at his tears, and how Judge Davis had walked in at just the right moment. That day could have ended very differently. I could have left that courtroom feeling defeated and disillusioned with our justice system. Instead, it became the first step on a new path. Marcus didn't mention that the chapter he had written for the book began with that very story. He had used it to illustrate how a single moment in court could change a person's life forever, for better or worse. After the formal presentation, people lined up to have their books signed by Judge Davis and Marcus. Judge Powell joined the line, waiting patiently for his turn. When he reached the table, he placed his copy of the book in front of Marcus. "I've already read your chapter," he said quietly. "It was humbling to see myself through your eyes. Thank you for your honesty, and for showing how I've tried to change." Marcus nodded. "My grandmother always said that the true measure of a person isn't in never making mistakes, but in how they respond to them." Judge Powell smiled. "Your grandmother was a wise woman. I wish I had known her better." As the event wound down, Judge Davis pulled Marcus aside. "I have some news," she said. "The book is getting attention in legal education circles. Several law schools are interested in using it in their ethics courses." Marcus was amazed. His grandmother's words would now help shape future generations of lawyers and judges. "There's more," Judge Davis continued. "I've been asked to lead a commission on judicial conduct reform, and I'd like you to be part of it as a student representative." "Me?" Marcus was stunned. "But I'm only in my first year of law school." "That's precisely why I want you involved. You bring a fresh perspective, not yet shaped by years in the system. Plus, you have your grandmother's journals and your experience as an educator. You see things others miss." As Marcus drove home that evening, he reflected on how much his life had changed in just 1 year. He still missed his grandmother terribly, but he felt her presence in everything he did. Her journals sat on his desk at home, and he often read them when facing difficult decisions or needing inspiration. The next morning, Marcus arrived early at Lincoln High School. Though he now attended law school in the evenings, he remained committed to his students. Today he had something special planned. When his first class filed in, they noticed a stack of books on his desk. "Good morning," Marcus said. "Today we're starting a new unit on civic engagement and justice, and I've brought something to help us explore these topics." He held up a copy of Justice Behind the Scenes. "This book just came out yesterday. It includes perspectives from judges, lawyers, defendants, and court staff. And yes, I wrote part of it." The students murmured with excitement. "I want to share something my grandmother wrote in her journal many years ago," Marcus continued. She said, "Justice isn't just what happens in courtrooms. It's what we do every day when we treat each other with dignity and respect. It's standing up when something is wrong. It's speaking up for those who cannot speak for themselves." One student raised her hand. "Mr. Johnson, is that why you decided to become a lawyer? Because of your grandmother?" Marcus thought for a moment. "Partly, but also because of all of you. As a teacher, I can help you learn about the world. As a lawyer, I hope to help make that world a little more just." Another student asked, "Will you stop teaching when you finish law school?" "I don't plan to," Marcus replied. "I believe the two roles complement each other. Teaching helps me explain complex ideas clearly, which is essential for a good lawyer. And my legal studies help me bring real-world context to our classroom discussions." After school, Marcus drove to the cemetery. It had become his ritual to visit his grandmother's grave whenever something significant happened in his life. He placed fresh flowers by her headstone and sat on the bench. "The book is out, Grandma," he said softly. "Your words are helping people understand what justice really means." A gentle breeze rustled the leaves of the oak tree that shaded the grave. Marcus felt a sense of peace wash over him. "I'm not sure if this is the path you imagined for me," he continued. "Teaching in law school and now this commission with Judge Davis, it's a lot. But somehow it feels right." As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the cemetery, Marcus thought about the strange twist of fate that had brought him to this point. A moment of cruelty in a courtroom, transformed by an unexpected ally walking through the door at just the right time. His grandmother had written in her final journal, "Justice isn't always swift or perfect. Sometimes it takes a detour, but I believe it finds its way eventually, especially when good people help guide it home." Marcus stood up and touched the headstone one last time. "Thank you for showing me the way, Grandma. I'll do my best to carry on your work." As he walked back to his car, Marcus felt ready for whatever came next. The path ahead would not be easy, but he wouldn't walk it alone. His grandmother's wisdom would guide him. Judge Davis would mentor him, and the community his grandmother had nurtured for decades would support him. From a single moment of humiliation in a courtroom had grown something beautiful and meaningful, a legacy of justice and compassion that would touch countless lives for years to come.